Okay, so this is video number 1 for lesson number 1. You can find the practice for this in your algebra course under April 13th, lesson number 1, and it should be the worksheet that's in here along with this video. So that's the worksheet that I'm working off of right now. So if you don't have a printer like me, I am just writing them in my notebook. You feel free to print off the sheet that we had if you have a printer, but if not, don't worry about it. So it says, the first thing it does is it gives some examples in a box. So the first example it gives is x squared plus 10x minus 39, okay, equals 0. And if you remember from before we left, we can use this as a visual if we have a square that has length of x on both sides that can be represented as x squared. Then if we have 10 x's, so like 1 length of x, so if we have 10 of those, we would put 5 on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we do the same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'd have 10 total x's. And then what would we need to do to complete the square? How many ones would we need to put to complete the square? So if you realize there's 5 here, there's 5 here, to complete the square we'd need 25 more. So we need, to complete the square, we need this number to be 25. So what am I going to have to add to negative 39 to get 25? So I need to add 39, but then I also need to add another 25. So I need to add 64 on each side to get me a positive 25 here. And the reason I have to do it to both sides is because in equation I have to maintain that balance. Okay, so if I do that to both sides, I get x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 64. And now that this is a perfect square, because when I factor, what are my factors of 25 that add to be 10? It's x plus 5 and x plus 5, which I can write as x plus 5 squared equals 64. And then, hey, look, I can undo it by taking the square root of both sides, and I get x plus 5 equals plus or minus 8. Don't forget the plus or minus, okay? And then I can subtract 5 on both sides, and I get x equals negative 5 plus 8 plus or minus 8. So to write that as two separate answers, I'm going to do negative 5 plus 8, which would be 3, and I'm going to do negative 5 minus 8, which would be negative 13. Okay, so those are my two answers for that quadratic equation. Okay, so you can do that with all of those with all those examples right there. I am going to run through one more, and then you can kind of check yourself with another example at the bottom. So this one I'm going to do without the visual. So if you look at example number 2, I have x squared plus 18x equals 40. So if you notice that c term's over here, so I need to add a c term here that will make this a perfect square trinomial. So the thing I have to do is I have to take that b value, which is 18, I have to cut it in half. Half of the b value is 9. I have to square half of the b value to give me 81. So I need this number to be 81 right there. So I can just add 81 to both sides, and I get x squared plus 18x plus 81 equals 40 plus 81, which is 121. And then this is a perfect square trinomial, so I know that the factors of this are going to be x plus 9, so I can rewrite that as x plus 9 squared equals 121. I can take the square root of both sides, and I get x plus 9 equals plus or minus 11. And then finally, to get x by itself, I can subtract 9 on both sides. So I have x equals negative 9 plus or minus 11. And I am going to simplify that to negative 9 plus 11 is going to be 2. And negative 9 minus 11 is going to be negative 20. So those are my two answers for that quadratic equation. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do is try that next one. So, or the one that says number 1, which is x squared plus 8x minus 12 equals 7. So take a minute, pause your video, and do that one real quick, and then I will show you the answer to that one. Okay, so when you finish solving it, you should get x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 35. So if you remember from before we left, if this is an irrational number and you can't take the square root of it, just leave it as the square root of 35, and just put the plus or minus in front of it. So if you're unsure on how to get this, this is where you might want to go to your teacher and ask for help, or come to office hours just to make sure that you got this down. But this should be more or less review to make sure that you have the concept of completing the square down before you move on to lesson 2, which is going to be a new way to solve quadratic equations. So this is a really good worksheet. Make sure you do this in your notebook and make sure that you have it down. If not, make sure to contact your teacher to make sure you can master this topic.